Vikings are in the number 2 seed at 7-1. They are one game behind the Eagles, who are 8-0, who have a couple challenging opponents coming up. The Vikings beat the Commanders, who the Eagles play this week, I believe. And here we are going to digest some of that and then get into the Bills game, which is a gigantic question mark because we don't know who will play quarterback for them. That's on everybody's minds this week. Sally, foremost, reaction to the Commanders game. I thought it was so fabulous because they didn't really squander a lead. They know they're up by 7, but then they just turned on the Jets when it mattered most, and that's what got me ultra hyped. But let's hear from you.
Really? So I kind of feel differently about this game than I have about all of the other ones. It was the first time this season, really, outside of the Eagles game, where I felt that maybe they weren't going to get it together
Oh, I felt
towards
that
the end.
too.
Yeah, but I haven't felt that yet this year. I've been riding high.
Oh, I see. Okay.
This was the one game where I started getting kind of worried there towards the end, especially when they were down at the goal line and they got the penalty, so they got a fresh of three new downs after they kicked it,
Yeah.
And when they couldn't convert that into 7 points, I was just like, oh gosh, I don't feel great about this. But they pulled it out again, and it doesn't really matter if it was pretty, they got it done. So
I think that I got excited by this because I felt like you with about, in real time, about 45 minutes left in the game. I was like, this is just one of those games, I guess, where we don't have it. And this is a throwback to the old road team. And then it was like they just kind of said, all right, we're done being goofy. We're just going to go win the thing and it's time to get real. And I always like the wins that they've had are fantastic, and they've, lost an 11-point lead, 10-point lead, and then come back and they win. That's fine. But I always get salty about losing a lead in general. This one didn't feel that way because it was only 7-0, whatever it was. And this one just because this is what good teams do. Like, they might have an off day, but in the fourth quarter, they just, press a button and it's go time. And that's what I felt that these guys did. And it gave me a little bit more excitement than the other wins outside of the Packer one, because that was, kind of a statement. Bryant, your reaction to the Commanders win?
Um, I definitely feel like they was going to find a way to win. I did think it was going to be a close game though, because I felt like you had two quarterbacks who wanted to kind of like, you know, compete really hard against their former teams or whatever.
Yeah.
And you remember I said that like last week. I said, yeah, I'm going to throw out all the can't win on the road outside in the grass type of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to still pull it off. I did feel like they will pull it off. I was keeping track of this game honestly too, because I kind of did get like unsure for a minute. Like, oh gosh, like, they might not win. And that's the thing about like all the things that I said, but then they found a way to pull it off at the end. And as you can see, Kirk Cousins was very happy about that because as he was on this plane ride going back and forth, and they was singing Antonio Brown's song and doing a little dance. And I know that felt good for him to be able to go back there and walk away, with a win, and then also be 7-1.
Ron, I was kind of like Bryant and Sally thinking, rationalizing myself. All right, we lose this thing. We ultimately lost to a 5-4 team that has this ferocious run defense, and then we're on the road. I was starting to do that chatter in my head, but then they won. What's your take, sir?
Well, it was, I mean, all things considered, I think they played pretty well. Like, I like even the interception at the end of the half. I like the fact that Kurt, we had a play where Kurt gave his receiver the chance. Now, there were a couple times in that game, I think there were two, where if Jefferson wants to be the best receiver in the game, which I think talent wise he is, he's got to come down with those 50-50 balls more than what he kind of has been. I mean, he did it two other times that game, so we're splitting hairs here. But now there was pass interference, I would say. But even with that interception, it didn't bother me so much because they were trying to be aggressive and get points. So I'm happy with that. And then just the moxie of this team, the resilience to come back and put it together and come back from a 10-point deficit after what was a very Vikings thing that happened where we've never seen the referee running into Cam Bynum on a sure interception. If not an interception, at least a bat down. But it changes a great defensive play one way or another into a touchdown, which everyone was just baffled by. So they were able to overcome that. But that was right away. I'm like, that is such a Vikings thing to happen. Like something that you've never seen before. But they overcame it, and Kirk put together some good throws. The throw to Jefferson when he got hammered, big play right there. And the ball placement on that Cook touchdown, and then the one-handed catch by Dalvin. So, I mean, yeah, a win's a win on the road. They're 7-1. They go to what would be their ultimately their biggest test, but the swagger of this team is on fire right now, and I think that's all thanks to Christian Darrisaw when he initially put the chain on Kirk in the first time, and man, that thing has spiraled into such a good vibes all around, and I'm loving it over here.
Brian, does some of that, shenanigans, the shit that we're seeing, does this remind you of the 2009 fun times at all?
It does, and the fact that they're even having fun lets you know that it's like it's things are going good, and honestly, I like to see that how the team got around each other, and that means that the guys are getting pretty close in the locker room. That's very important. Is having the guys, feel like they have each other's back and just having a good time with each other. So me seeing that, I was actually happy to see it. I'm like, okay, they're having a good time. They all get along, like for the most part.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what stands out to me about it too, is that is what it shows. That's what it indicates to me, that it's more than let's just go to work and go home. And these guys are in this clique and these guys are in that clique.
Right.
And that is, to me, it's like, looks like it's such a bonding experience. And there was that in 2017, but 2009 is like the peak of seeing all of that stuff. So that I think is actually an intangible thing that's really important.
It is.
Even furthermore on that, like you look across or just the depth chart across or just across the board, no one player feels like they're above anyone else. Like you look at the relationship between JJ and KJ, for example. You look how TJ Hawkinson comes in and fits right in and just balled out. And then I look at the other side of the ball. Caleb Evans came in and he not only was doing it in the passing game, but he was doing it in the run coverage. But if you look even deeper into that, when he goes to the sideline, the first person coming to high five him and dap him up is Booth, the guy who was taken ahead of him. So it's not like a case where I know, and I'm not ragging on Buffalo. This just goes back to the first game of the year where the cornerback that they took, I think Elam, the one out of Florida, he was their first round pick, but they took a fifth round pick rookie who ended up starting over him. And like all game, you just picture they keep focusing it on Elam, and he looks like pissed off at the world that he didn't win the job. But you're not seeing that out of Booth. So those are the little things where there's something different with this vibe. And again, I'm not criticizing any past regime. But just this group of players, they're rallying together, and it's exciting to see.
We usually get into some of the surprises from the game, and the one that I had that just stood off the page was I think 2 days before the game, I wrote a piece on VikingsTerritory.com about how if the Vikings want, they can make TJ Hawkinson their Mark Andrews or their Travis Kelce in terms of target load. That man can handle it. If TJ Hawkinson went to the Chiefs because Travis Kelce got hurt, they could use him in that same role. I didn't know if the Vikings would do that, let alone the first time he'd ever seen the offense. So when they're targeting him like a madman, I think as Thielen regrettably slows down, that if they so desire, and they did against the Commanders, they can target TJ Hawkinson 7 to 15 times a game and he can handle it. And it's more than just, Johnny Munt who can be there to catch the ball every once in a while. He can be a tremendous asset. And it's beautiful. It makes the trade look worthwhile, if only for a game.
Wait until he actually learns the playbook too.
I had people emailing me asking me how much I don't know if they were looking for fantasy advice, but emailing me asking how many targets that I thought he would say. And I was saying, about 4 to 6 to kind of get his toe in the water. And then the dude got 9, which is the most by a Vikings tight end since Rudolph in 2018. So it was a brave.
And he played most of the snaps.
Yeah.
And then there was that one play where, like, stood out to a lot of people, where he was one-on-one with Montez Sweat, one of the best pass rushers in the game, and he looked like a tackle out there. So,
yeah,
but more importantly, how he opened it up for JJ. Like, JJ even said that he hasn't seen coverage like that for a long time. So, if he usurps Thielen in that passing game, like that's only good things, because Thielen's going to be Thielen when he needs it.
Yeah.
So.
How many yards did he end up with?
I think it was 7 for
90, wasn't it?
7 for 80 or 7 for 90.
What's funny with that is I think he had like 3 or 4 screens that went for negative
Yeah,
yards. So
yeah,
No,
that's all those other ones.
I'm talking about Hawkinson.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
yeah.
Never mind. Okay. Got it.
He ended up with, I have the box score up. He ended up with
Oh, you meant
70 on
9
9 catches.
targets. 9 targets, not
Yeah.
9.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Okay. That's where I was mixed up.
He did have 9 catches though.
Was it 9 catches? Yeah,
Yeah. 9 for 70.
9 for 70.
Okay.
So I was
There
saying
we go.
7. I was saying 7 for 90, but it's 9 for 70.
Okay. There
Oh.
now. That's
Those
why
damn
I'm all
screens.
turned around. Okay. Got it.
Sally,
Got it.
do you have any non-Hawkinson surprises from Washington?
Well, I mean, again, I think the most surprising thing is that this is the first game where I have tweeted anything negative about the Vikings whatsoever. So I
Which
don't know
one was that?
in the third quarter, I said
Okay.
I called them pathetic twice. But I mean, come on, normally it's like 100 negative tweets a game, winning or losing. So I'm turned over a new leaf here. I don't feel like I'm getting enough credit for it, obviously. But the most surprising thing, I don't know. I shouldn't still be surprised by the defense, but I am. I didn't expect them, I guess, to be this dominant. I didn't expect Zadarius Smith to be this good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we had high hopes that he was going to be good, but coming out of his situation from last year, I never thought that he was going to be getting all of these sacks and that they were going to be leading in interceptions and all of that. It's just unbelievable to me in a good way.
Ron, is Evans your surprise, or do you got one more for me?
Well, I mean, I'll piggyback off of what Sally said. The way this defense has come around, I mean, like I always knew Hunter was a talent. I just thought maybe he was being misused, but maybe he just needed time.
He did.
And
that was
he's looking like his old self, and him and Smith on the outside. And keep in mind, we're doing this essentially with a patchwork D line, like with James Lynch and Blacklock and these guys that without Tomlinson, like you're replacing a big piece. And I know Tonga came in. I think that's his name, Kaius Tonga.
Yeah.
He's that beef eater up front, but they're doing a good job. The linebacking core is playing great. The secondary is holding their own. So for me, the biggest surprise, and this is probably a negative, but Ed Ingram, I feel like, has regressed in a lot of ways, and there were multiple plays where he he looked like Udo or Dozier out there, and that part I feel like could be problematic going forward. And I hope that's not the case. I hope it's just a young kid that's still learning his way. But right now, our bookends and our center have been they've been playing great. So if we can get consistent play out of our guard spot, this could be really scary with Hawkinson in the mix as well. So I'd like to see that get shored up, but I'm also not a coach.
So Bryant, we talked about the 2009 team that you were a part of, and this is the first time the Vikings have been 7-1 through 8 games since 2009. And obviously that quarterback, Mr. Favre, is better than Kirk Cousins and has more of a clutch gene. But what is your temperature now? We got 9 weeks in the books. What's your temperature on the team, Bryant?
I think it's they're doing a lot better than I expected. At this point, I don't think any of us thought they would be 7-1. We'll be sitting here at 7-1 this time a year. So right now, I look at it, they're overachieving and way better than our expectations.
Do you still personally need to see them beat somebody's ass, or as a player, do you not really care if they just keep winning these squeakers?
I feel like the long as they keep just finding ways to win, is like that's all that really matters, is just find ways to win. And like I said, because you remember we were on the other side of that stick like 2 years ago, where they finding ways to lose.
Yeah.
So I take this. I'd rather this. Just keep finding ways to win. Like, though it doesn't have to be close, but if it's got to be a dogfight and you're finding ways to win in the end, I'm satisfied, because at the end of the day, once you look back on the season, you're not going to think about each individual score of the game. You're going to know what the record was. So
yeah. And the only reason I bring up the ass beating thing is because to me, this team 7-1, there's really not tremendous buzz about it. I think everybody's just waiting to see if it's for real. And
I look, the only other team that has a better record is the Eagles. So I'm like,
Right.
they're the second best team right now, and nobody's really like mentioning it. It's like, I thought that to myself. I was like, why does it seem like they're just under the radar still, a 7-1 team, when the only best thing is 8-0. And after
that team that beat them.
Yeah.
Somebody else has one loss. You know what
And
I'm saying?
the funny part is like because the disrespect that they continue to get, which I'm fine with because I've seen teams that like they're the heavy favorites and then they like nothing happens. So I kind of like this under the radar, but they're like the seventh or eighth favorite like to win the Super Bowl like in a lot of sports books. Which again, some of those teams I get it, but to have the Niners at whatever they're at 4-4, 4-5, whatever that record is, that's just asinine. Like to put a like all the things that they want to criticize Cousins for. It's the same thing with Garoppolo, but even on a further on a bigger scale. So, but again, I'll play it under the radar as long as we can, and we'll see what happens.
I think there's some, even though like the power rankings and stuff, that they are getting respect there. They're usually about 3, 4, or 5. So it's not like they're down in the 15s, but the Vegas odds and whatnot. I still think it's like folks just feel like the Ravens and Cowboys on a neutral field are better, and maybe they are, and maybe they would just wax the Vikings. But it's the most under the radar 7-1-ish team by the Vikings I've ever seen, and I've been a fan since '96. And I mean, there haven't been gobs of these teams, but
you don't have many to choose from.
Well,
but is this the third one?
No, it's the every time they do this, they go to the NFC Championship, 98, 2000, and 2009. And then even 2000,
2002, yeah.
Even 2000, but 2000 was a lot like this. They were ultimately won 11-5. They were winning close games, and only thing anybody ever remembers about that season is the NFC champion. Yep, nobody cares about that, which rightfully so. Again, it ended sour. But let's use the temperature conversation, Sally, as a segue to get into the Bills. I teased at the beginning of the show that it's either Josh Allen, the MVP frontrunner, or Case Keenum, who we know. And I think a popular topic is, who do we want to face? Do you want to get a more feasible victory against Keenum, or do you want to go up against Allen to really judge your mettle and see how good you are?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. I feel like we've said on this show for several weeks that their true test is going to be this Sunday against the Bills. We've been looking at it on the schedule for a long time now, and we have said that might be their first loss. I do also like that they're flying under the radar, and I get really frustrated with people who keep pointing out the close games because it's always the quote, good teams find a way to win. So why does this not apply this year to this team? I don't understand. But I feel like we're not going to get a true gauge now of where the Vikings are either way, like we were expecting to, because even if Josh does play, he's not going to be at 100%.
Sure.
And if it's Case Keenum, well, I don't know how to feel about it. I guess I would prefer Josh play. I don't know why they're being so coy about it if that is going to be the case. Haha.
We like
I
that.
just don't want to. I don't know. I want to see the true thing, but then obviously, I don't think that Case Keenum is going to fall into that same narrative that I always talk about with backup quarterbacks, because we've beaten Case Keenum as a backup quarterback since he has played for other teams, and I've watched Case Keenum a lot. Probably more than most people since he's left Minnesota. And I don't see anything impressive about him. I love the guy more than anything, but so I guess I would rather Josh. But how bittersweet, well, bittersweet isn't the word, but if it's a Case to Diggs sideline touchdown to end the game, that's all I can see personally.
Yeah. For all the storylines, it really would be, the cosmos aligning for Case's first start as a Bill. The whole reason they brought him in is so that he could be very light Josh Allen in these circumstances, which he would try to be. But with the Josh Allen stuff, I don't think he's going to play because of the evidence that's mounting. First, they were mum about it. They didn't say he's, progressing the right way. They said it's a we'll see. It's quite literally what your mom told you when you were 7. We'll see if you can get that toy. And then that pro football doc, David Chow, who's broke down the film, and the guy knows what he's talking about. He has a track record of getting it right. Says that he's going to miss this game and probably a couple more because they don't want to, monkey with the nerve damage or anything like that. And then he didn't practice today. And then McDermott, the Bills coach, said, we're going to take the common sense approach on this. And this is how it goes when you're leading up to tell your fan base on Friday that, he's probably not going to play. This is why we have Case. Now, you can't take all that to the bank, but the evidence is starting to support that we're going to see Case Keenum. And even that makes me nervous because, he knows us. We know him, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, it's in Buffalo. And, I don't have tremendous vibes about this one either way, but I never did. I looked at this when this game came out in April and I was like, well, there's a big fat L. Even if they're somehow mediocre, it's a big fat L because it just doesn't, it feels like one of those Vikings games, road games, that they're going to get it handed to them. I hope I'm wrong. Ron, your temperature after that depressing speech.
Well, no, I mean I think ultimately it's set up. It's a lose-lose situation for the Vikings. If it's Josh Allen and they win, well, you beat it hurt Josh Allen. If it's Josh Allen and they lose, you couldn't beat it hurt Josh Allen. If it's Case Keenum and any result, then well, it's either you beat a backup or you lost to Case Keenum. So I think all this will be the biggest test in more ways than are needed at this point in the year. But yeah, to your point, I had it chalked up as a loss. There was no way, even as we sit now, there's no way I would sit here and emphatically say that we're going to win. Obviously, with Case under center, it does even that game up a little bit. But the Bills still, like, their defense has been, as instrumental to that team's success this year as Josh Allen. Not taking anything away from him, he's been great, but he still has those modes where, like, on Sunday before he got hurt, where I don't care, I'm going to throw it up, and he has that in him. So with Case can do that. He can also make plays that aren't expected to be there. So we'll see. Hopefully, it's a win regardless of who's under center, but I would rather see a fully healthy Josh Allen because I want this team to be tested. And the iron sharpens iron. You get better as you play better teams, and the way this team is vibing, I think that they would have at least been able to make it, interesting with a healthy Allen. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens on Friday and the next couple of days with practice.
Bryant, when you're, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just need to add this. The thing I'm probably most concerned about if Case Keenum plays is Twitter.
Yep.
So,
really, why?
Because these people still can't get over. There's so many people that just hate Case Keenum for I don't know what reason. They're very.
So you mean Kirk Cousins or Case?
No, they have to constantly put Case down because they think they can only like Kirk or Case. Like, you have to be in a camp. So I see so many people still saying terrible things about Case Keenum for no reason. And then it's just going to spark up the whole Case versus Kirk debate again, like 4 years later. And I hate it. And I'm going to hate everyone. I already know.
If they win,
it makes no sense. Like, you used to shovel the guy's driveway. Like, calm down. Be happy for him.
Bryant, there had to be times maybe in that 2006 through 2008 era where you weren't sure who was going to be the quarterback, and whether it was injury or just coach deciding who's it going to be. From your position, you probably won't know too much about the defense side, like the Vikings are game planning. But how do you get ready for not knowing who the quarterback is going to be?
I think we kind of can tell during the week.
Okay, that's a good point.
Because they may rotate them, but then that come like Thursday or Friday, you can kind of tell who's getting more of the reps.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, they're like leaning towards Wednesday's probably the day where they're trying to evenly rotate, and then somebody's starting to get more of the reps on Thursday. And by Friday, you can tell who they plan on starting with, because now they're in there getting a lot more. And you just have to get, adjusted to that style of play, because all those quarterbacks had different, type of styles of play. And that's also, we, of course, like I said, would know, before like everybody else would. Like, you already had an idea.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this topic. I think it was 2 weeks ago, Sally, that I was admonished about looking ahead to home field advantage. But there's been 2 wins, of varying calibers of success. Well, at least of degree. They squeakers, roller coasters. But now they're 7-1. They have a 4.5 game lead plus a tiebreaker on the Packers. And I think
could y'all believe that going into the season, you would never thought that the Packers would be where they are, right?
No,
I think my version of a regression for them was going from 13-4 to 11-6. That was what I thought would happen. I thought Rodgers would be able to figure it out. And the thing that's so strange is that his offensive line is still wonderful, and the defense isn't atrocious, and it's really him and the offense. And the guy was MVP in the last 2 seasons. So no, Bryant, No one. And it's hilarious to watch the Packers fans just be absolute toddlers about one speck of adversity. And, and it's like, you guys got to get used to this. This is how the rest of us live from time to time. It's hilarious.
This is the message. Don't do drugs. Don't do ayahuasca, because clearly it's not working out. He said he's a different person since he's done ayahuasca. Before the season, he said that. Well, it's very obvious he is. Except he's even less happy, less athletic and less happy.
And their biggest problem is that they've dug this hole so deep. Like, it doesn't really matter now if they did a Packersian thing and turned it around, because for them to win the division right now, they have to go 8-0 and the Vikings have to go 3-6. That's that. There is no other way for it to happen. They have to win every game, and then the Vikings have to go, complete 2016 nosedive style. So now it's just a matter of whether or not they can. God, are they 3-6? If they can somehow get to a wild card, which would be new territory for them, and then go on a run. But when we say that each week, then they come out and look like shit. And it's like, well, you guys got to actually do the run at some point. You can't just.
I think that's the problem. It's like you watch this team play, and I don't see an end in sight. Like, even like, it doesn't matter who you line up on the other side of it. They are just not playing well. Like, whether, like Rodgers, I think deserves a lot of the blame. Because yes, there's been problems around him between, Bakhtiari's hurt a lot and whatnot, but he blames his receivers, which there are times that that's the case. But there's times when he's not, because of his stubbornness, he just won't throw to someone and they're open. So his lack of trust in his receivers is then coming back to it. And then he's throwing 3 interceptions in near the red zone against the Lions. So, he deserves a lot of the blame. He fell off a lot. I just don't see, and then losing Rashawn Gary for the year, that's going to hurt. Mm-hmm. They picked up Jonathan Abram today, I guess. So, but I love to see it, because it's especially the way the Vikings vibes are going, but to see them in just a straight, tailspin, it's fantastic to watch.
And the duality of it is that the guy that they traded away that helped cause this big fiasco for them is on an equally as shitty team. So it's like that both teams mutually exclusively got terrible. And it's like, that's not how trades are supposed to work. You're supposed to either have highway robbery or empower one another. But these two teams, at least for now, just got worse.
And imagine if they missed their window of trading Rodgers, because if they trade him in the summer, they get the highest value possible coming up at 2 MVPs. Mm-hmm. But they didn't. Then they paid him, so they really have no outlook. And it's not like you can bench him for Jordan Love. Like, how are you going to sell that to the fans? And then
that's
Rodgers
what they want.
Or maybe not, the fans aren't the right thing. Like, Rodgers would then he's going to be the ultimate petulant child. And then instead of him retiring or finding a trade partner, why wouldn't he just sit his ass on the bench and collect his guaranteed money that he's getting?
Yeah.
And just not do anything.
And it's, no matter what happens, retirement or a trade, or it's huge dead cap right now. And so I don't think there's any way to get around that. That's how big that, at least for 2 more years after this, they're going to be in some sort of cap hell.
Well, I'm sick of hearing him complain about it. He goes up there in the press conference and says that he's rethinking a lot of things and all of this. And he, as you said, he takes no responsibility for anything ever. He had a ticket out of there, and they had a ticket to get away from him, which seemed, it was very obvious that it wasn't harmonious, as we said all last summer. And he went back and did this. So he has no one to be upset with but himself. And he never will be. But I feel like if this was the Packers that we know and loathe, I would feel pretty confident that they could go on somewhat of a run and get a wild card. Mm-hmm. But because the NFC isn't very good, mm-hmm. those wild card potential teams aren't very good. But I don't see how they're going to get it together. I watched a lot of that game Sunday, and there was nothing. There was no chemistry. No one wanted to be there. Aaron, of course, doing his normal temper tantrums. And so I just don't know how it could happen.
Well, honestly, they got to start
a team that, I was going to say, against a team that literally is waving the white flag that traded arguably their best player, and you still can't go on the road and look like a competent team.
And their schedule is hard. Is more difficult.
Yeah, they have in these 8 games, in order for them to get a wild card now, they're going to have to go 7-1 or 6-2 against the Cowboys and then the Eagles and the Titans. And so I keep trying to figure out ways for this to be too good to be true. Like, they're going to come roaring back, but they needed to start that roar rack out 3 weeks ago. And that's just too late. But Sally, on the home field advantage thing now, no, be serious.
Okay.
Because the Vikings are a 98% lock per 538.com to win the division. That means they have one home playoff game. Now, if they get the 2 seed, that means they're going to have 2. So is now the time, even though we don't have that blowout win, is now the time to start, sharpening our takes for this home field advantage, or maybe even catch the Eagles.
Oh, it's happening for sure. I didn't want to talk about who they were going to play.
Oh, I see.
That
Okay.
I didn't want to pick out like who would you rather face in the first round, because so much is going to change between now and then. And once we see them play Dallas, and once we see them play the Giants, who are going to most likely be, a playoff team if they stay on this track. So I didn't want to pick an opponent, but yeah, they're definitely getting at least one, and hopefully they'll get 2. I mean, that would be a really nice change of pace, because the 09 team and the 17 team blew major chances to lock that up for home field advantage throughout. And I think that had a lot to do with those lost NFC championship games, unfortunately. But yeah, I forgot what the question was now.
No, is it fair game to start looking at the home field advantage?
I'm already looking at the weather report, because am I going to be tailgating or am I not? So yeah, it's completely.
We can't be in the playoffs and not tailgate.
I know, but what if it's like -15?
Yeah, there's always, since I've been going to that stadium every year that we're allowed to since 2016, there's always one game that's cold as hell. And it's only 1 or 2. The rest of it's, pretty doable for Midwesterners, but there's one game where you have to take the Skyway if you're me, depending on where you park, and it's, just cold. And so that's probably what you're looking at on your weather forecast, that, we're going to do this when it's frigid.
Right. Well, yeah.
On the Giants, this is completely looking ahead. When they come to play the Vikings, and so long as, Kirk Cousins is healthy and Justin Jefferson, they're going to destroy that team. I'm telling you this right now, because one of the dirty little secrets about the Giants is their offensive line still sucks. They have one good player, and that's Andrew Thomas. The rest of the guys, they have a bunch of Dakota Dozier types. And then the Saquon is their pride and joy. And the one thing that the Vikings defense does really well right now, somehow, is stop the run. So that game, no matter whose the record is, I think the Vikings are going to take care of business, but that's a long time away. All right, any closing arguments for the group tonight before we cap it, and then we'll do a post-game Monday?
Yeah, be nice to Case Keenum. I mean, I don't want him to win, but be nice to him. The fans, not the Vikings.
Such a weird guy to have the, object of your ire, because he's lovable.
Yeah. And I mean, he's getting the shift off from working in the team store, a day off from working in the team store. Like, and so let the guy have his moment. Bryant,
any closing arguments from you, sir?
No, I don't have any.
All right, cool. And is anybody ultra concerned that like me, that the Vikings will lose to Case Keenum and the Bills?
It's always that's why I said it's a lose-lose, because that's ultimately the worst case scenario. But Case is a competent quarterback. He's just not a consistently competent quarterback, which is why he's bounced around. So everyone who's a Purple fan knows what he is capable of. And I'm not saying he has a chip on his shoulder, but that's one of those where you always want to show your ex how things could have been. So he's going to come out and he's going to play without a care. It's not like he's worried. It's not his job. He's a placeholder, so he's going to play as free as can be. And there's a reason why he's one of the all-time leading passers in college history, because dude can sling it. Good situation for him. So I just hope it doesn't happen. I hope it's the other way around.
Normally, I would agree, but almost every team in the league is Case Keenum's ex.
That's true. This is the one. Like the love that was lost.
Yeah, we were engaged.
There was magic here.
Got left at the altar.
He got paid by Denver, but there was magic here that clearly. I don't think there's any animosity from him to everything, because I think he's a smart enough guy. He gets it, but This is the one where I think he looks at it as, if I have my chance and be able to show them that I could have been that guy.
Yeah.
Granted, those decision makers are no longer here, but that would have been something.
Well, I was just gonna say, I hope it doesn't come down to a 50+ yarder kick. We had a little redemption last week with Greg Josephs, but
yeah. I'll leave you guys with this thought on Keenum, which is basically parroting what Ron said. This is when he's at his best. When he is not good is when they say, here you go, homie, you're the QB1. He did that one good time, and that was with the Vikings. As a starter, the Browns filling in, he was 2-0. He's great when you come in and say, hey, this is your game. Like, you're going to do this, and then the other guy takes over in a week or two. This is when he's at his best. His problems throughout his career is when they give him the crown and say, take us to the promised land. Then he turns into a dude who's usually 5-11 or 5-12 now. So that's what concerns me, is that when the stakes are low, he's at his best. And there's just always that revenge factor. All right, group. Monday night, we'll be back to talk about this win, lose, or draw.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
Have a great weekend.
All right.
Yeah.
Later.
Have a good one.